Hey everybody, welcome to Houdini Hangout. My name's Peter. I'm the host of the stream, and it's great to have you here today. We're going a little earlier than usual because we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff, some procedural flowers, flops, operators, things like that. And we're going to have a guest, Danny Laursen, who's going to be showing us kind of how he's gone about doing some of these things and the operators that he's made that he's calling flops for flower operators. So I think that'll be pretty cool. So lots of interesting stuff to get to today. I think it'll be a really interesting conversation, and should just kind of bring something a little bit different to the channel. And hopefully you'll find some really interesting stuff here. So I'll be kind of moderating the chat and things like that as Danny's showing us his different kind of workflows and ideas and things like that. So just like normal, if you guys have any questions or thoughts or ideas, anything like that, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we can kind of have a little conversation from there. Now I guess let me turn it over here, and we can bring Danny in. So there we go. Hey Danny, how's it going?
Hello. Very well.
Good.
And you?
Glad to have you here. Hello, everybody in the chat, Fractaler and Tatar. Welcome. And so we're going a little earlier today because Danny, you're in Denmark, correct?
Yep, that's right.
So Danny's joining us from across the ocean, or joining me from across the ocean. Maybe not you, but if you're wherever you're watching from. But so Danny, you've been kind of in this process of working on this idea of procedural flowers and stuff like that. But maybe before we even get into that, maybe just share a little bit about yourself. You've done some work recently with Tumblehead, right? I think you did some work on turbulence. Maybe what exactly was that like, and how did that go?
Yeah, that was a fun process. I did a bunch of lighting for the plane interior shots, trying to figure out like how do we get how do we use cops for getting some dynamic lighting in there and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very cool, very interesting trying all the new tools. I think we were beta testing as well while we were making turbulence. So it was really interesting trying to figure out like, oh, all of this is new. How do we how do we use this in our production.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I feel like it was you guys were all beta testing the basically KineFX tools that have Apex in them, and then also Cops I think kind of got
yeah.
brought in at some point too. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
this whole thing of like yeah, just like it's so many different variables there, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
so that's awesome.
very
So
good.
you worked on that doing that kind of stuff. That's fantastic.
Hmm.
And so what kind of brought you to doing these flowers? Was there something specific that you're working on, just a personal project, you know?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I was interning at Revenant, which is a studio in Glasgow that does a bunch of different stuff, experiential uh, works and motion graphics and stuff like that. And we were doing a piece in-house where we needed to do some flowers, and I was kind of asked to try to figure out a setup for these flowers, how to get those flowers blooming and stuff like that. So that's when I started looking into it, and I kind of just got hooked. And ever since then, it's been a little project I keep checking in on every once in a while, just to see did I figure out some new things I can do with it. And every time it gets simpler and simpler. And then recently, I thought, at this point, it's quite a fast setup and it's quite simple. But I think if it gets wrapped up into HDAs as well, and you get some nice recipes and stuff like that, it's gonna be a really fun setup that you can just, you know, quickly put down some stuff and animate some flowers and have fun with it, rather than getting into all of those technical issues that you keep hitting your head on when you try to make these setups, because there are a lot. So yeah, here we are with
Yeah, awesome. Yeah,
flops.
that's it makes sense. Like you kind of get it. It always seems like you get into something from, some random direction, right, in life, and it's like you start thinking about it, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh, you keep kind of like pondering it and stuff like that. So
yeah,
that's kind of
exactly.
interesting. Um, I think it's also cool that you're saying that these are getting simpler and simpler as you go. I think that's a good sign. That's a good sign, right?
Yeah,
Like things are going in a good direction there. So that's awesome.
yeah,
Very cool.
exactly.
Um, well, why don't we kind of jump in here? I see that you have um, a video here, so I'm going to just switch over for you to kind of take control a little bit here. And I think you
Yeah,
have a video,
cool.
and just maybe explain, what it is you've got going on here.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to show for the people who don't know what flops is, or what we're kind of aiming to do with this stream. So this is one of the recipes from flops. So this is a setup that you can basically just search configure simple flower, and this is what you get out of the box. It's a little bit of added lighting, of course, but other than that, it's the exact setup. So that's really what flops is. It's a framework that simplifies making things like this. And here we have a cactus, which is also made using the same system. And yeah, so we're going to have a look first at how all of this stuff works, kind of vanilla Houdini. So how does KineFX work, and how do we get into making flowers, and what are the foundations of this setup? And then after that, we'll have a look at these recipes and flops, and maybe if we have time, we can look at some of the other demo projects I'm working on, trying to inject some slightly more custom and more complicated things into it. But the whole idea is that it's supposed to be very open, and it's supposed to feel very Houdini. Like you can always hack your way into things, and you can inject custom setups in between the flops nodes. So yeah, so
Cool.
hopefully we get
Yeah,
time
no, it
to look
sounds
at that,
great.
but otherwise we just go through the basics of what it is and how it works.
Yeah, yeah, sounds
Yeah,
great. Yeah, let's do that.
cool.
Take
Okay,
us in.
so we'll start off with a little bit of talk about what KineFX even is. So if we see here, what is a joint? A joint is a point with a name attribute and a transform attribute. And those allow it to basically be recognized around throughout all the nodes and by all the nodes in your setup. And the transform attribute allows it, as this animation shows here, it allows it to be rotated and scaled as well, which you don't see here. But yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out by turning a curve into a skeleton and into a mesh of a single petal. And then we're going to capture the skeleton onto the mesh. So basically, we're going to tell the mesh and the skeleton which parts of the mesh should be deformed by which parts of the skeleton. And you can see that here with the colors, they're all aligned to one of the joints on the skeleton. And then we're going to have a look at how flowers distribute their petals, which is something called Phyllotaxis. So usually they do it in this golden spiral thing. So that's what we're going to be recreating here. With flops, you can do a lot of other shapes as well, but it's all based on the same setup. So then we're going to copy some meshes and the skeletons onto the points and do some funky stuff to get it all working. And then to do the animation of the flower, we're going to make an activation frame across each of the points, each of the seed points. So we're going to have this start frame attribute that tells it which frame it should start animating at, basically. And then we're going to use the attribute fade node to make a growth attribute using that start frame. So you can see that over here on the right side, it just kind of animates in, and we're also going to mask that so that the innermost petals don't get, they don't grow as much, basically. So the concept behind the animation is skeleton blend using that attribute from before, the growth attribute. So in flops and in our KineFX setup here, the concept is that you make a bud pose and a bloom pose, and then you just blend between them using this growth attribute. So you don't have a bunch of parameters to animate. You just have the one, which is the growth attribute. And yeah, that's it for the general overview. So I don't know
Awesome.
if there's
Yeah,
any questions already, or if we should just move on.
no, not yet. That's I love. We were talking about this a little bit before we started. I really enjoyed that you're using like the procedural animation stuff. I think we were talking about how you're doing some stuff with like the fade attribute fade node and stuff like that. And I just think it's nice to have stuff that's, you know, really obviously procedural from start to finish, and then you just have so much more control over it. I just like that. I try to do that as much as I can on the stream, so I'm sure people have probably seen me do that a couple times. So
yeah.
Sure. I like this too, how you've got kind of the two different states for it, that you've got where you kind of start from this more, you know, constricted bud pose and then have it, you know, go to the bloom pose. Have you ever thought about or like considered there needing to be more in-betweens ever? Or do those kind of seem to kind of cover it?
Yeah, no, I think I've been looking, it's been annoying me a little bit because I've been looking at some roses where
Okay.
they do this kind of, they do a little bit of upwards motion first. They kind of jiggle a little bit upwards and then they bloom out from there. And it doesn't seem like you can really get that with this setup, which makes sense because you can't really tell it to first do the upward growth and then do the outward growth unless you
Yeah.
have more poses. So I am considering how I should set that up.
Right.
But I'm also considering if Apex is maybe the next place to go for the
Mm.
animation part of this setup.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that too
Yeah.
at some point here, but yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, no, that's great. That's really cool. I just was curious if you've run into that, and that I guess I'm
Yeah.
sure there's edge cases for everything, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to always run into stuff like that. So
Yeah, for sure.
cool,
But no,
cool.
yeah, I mean, there's some pretty obvious situations where you would want to do that. So
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's obviously quite robust as it is. So, I think that it's just a question I was just having, just thinking, seeing the two
Yeah,
poses and
yeah,
things like
for
that.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, why don't you kind of walk us through and show us how this
Yeah.
works?
Let's do it.
In a more, traditional kind of look as far as like in just straight KineFX, and then we can kind of go from there and look at
Yeah,
some more stuff. Cool.
let's do it. All right. So we're basically just going to start out with a line, which I showed before. So this line is just going to be the base to make our mesh from and to make our skeleton from. So to make the mesh, we just sweep the line and we sweep it with a ribbon. So you can see it needs a little bit more geometry, because right now if we try to apply the scale ramp here and we apply something in the middle, it doesn't do anything. So we just add more points. And then we can start shaping something like a petal shape. If I just make those smooth and increase the width, then I think our example is probably going to look a little bit ugly, because it's a bunch of sliders and you just kind of have to play around with it, which is also why I like having those recipes, that already have some pleasing things set up from the beginning, and then you can adjust where you need to.
It's okay. A
Yeah.
lot of the stuff I do on here turns out fractionally nice. So I think this will
Yeah,
be
yeah.
it'll be totally fine. No worries.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just gonna add a little checkpoint here and say this is our mesh. So this is the petal mesh, and I like to make those green because that's how they're colored in flops. And then to turn this line into a skeleton, we just add a rig doctor, and this rig doctor does exactly what I showed before to the joints. So if you turn on this initialize transforms, and then we control click on this thing here, we can display our transform attribute here, and we can also display the name attribute. So we can see that each of the points are called something different, and they all have this transform attribute on them. So now this is a working rig, or a working skeleton. Yeah, so let's drop down a null again and say that this is our skeleton. And now we're going to try to just bone deform it. So this is a node that just takes in the mesh that you want to deform, and it takes in the rest skeleton, so that's the skeleton before anything has been done to it. And then it takes in an animated skeleton. So if you add in a rig pose, which is a node that can pose the skeleton for you, basically. If we go into this rig pose here and we get the viewport handle, we can start clicking the joints and we can start rotating them around. And then we go to the bone deform, it's not working because we didn't do the capture. And that's an important step, right? Because otherwise it doesn't know what to do with the skeleton. So we're going to use a bone capture proximity. So we're just going to be looking at which joints are closest to the mesh. So we plug in the mesh in the first input and the skeleton in the second input. And then we just take the output of the capture proximity into the bone deform. And now we have a working petal rig, and we can animate it around. So that's cool. But we also need to figure out how to do that curling animation. So what we could do is, we could go through all of these things and we could animate them by hand, curling them up like this. But if you notice what I'm doing here is I'm kind of going through systematically every single joint and just rotating it a little bit to get the curling animation. And that's where Houdini is great, right? Because instead of doing that by hand, we can do a little bit of code and it's just one simple line and that's going to do it for us. So that's with a rig attribute wrangle. We just drop that in here in the skeleton and then into the third input of the bone deform. And if we look at our attributes, we have the transform, but that's in world space. Then we have the local transform, which is the one we're also updating when we're animating in the rig pose. So that's in local space, right? So that just means if we start adding rotations, it's going to rotate around the joint. So we can do that by saying for at local transform. Oh, sorry. We say pre-rotate because that's the function for rotating. Then we want to rotate our for at local transform. And then I think I always forget this, so I have to look it up every single time. But I think the first thing you input is the amount you want to rotate it. And then you need to input the axis that you want to rotate it around. And I think we can see that if we can add this rig visualize node here and increase the joint scale, so then we can see our axes. And so here we can see that the axis we want to rotate it around is the z-axis, because that's the one that's pointing the same way as the mesh. So when it rotates, it's going to rotate around it. So
Hey, Danny, would you mind just making your text a little bit bigger in that expression? Just doing the control
yeah,
plus.
how do you
control plus? Yep.
Shoot. So my keyboard is Nordic layout, so I don't think it's the same button for me.
Oh, it's not. It's something plus. I think.
Oh, there we go.
There you
that
go.
Works. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So something like that. Yeah.
works.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let me see here. So just need to make sure I have all the brackets correct. Okay. Yeah. So then we just say 0, 0, 1. So that's just saying we have nothing in the x, nothing in the y, and 1 in the z. So that's the z-axis, right? And nothing happens, which is great because we don't have any amount right now. But if we start increasing this, we can see it starts curling. So this is just the wrangle that we're going to use for everything in this setup. And this is basically the code that all of the skeleton posing is based on in flops as well. There's a little bit of scaling as well, but it's very simple at its core. So we'll just call this like curl wrangle or something like that. Yeah.
So there's a question here in the chat that I'll bring up real quick. It says that the transform attribute is just to prepare the points for deformation, right? And so I think the question is adding the transform attribute. Is that just so that, we're preparing the points for deformation?
Yeah, I mean, it's so the points know how they're oriented in space to begin with. And I think so because you're using this forward local transform, right? It's kind of important how they're oriented at the beginning. So if these were all rotated randomly around, right? If I start to animate or like modify the rotation based on the z-axis, if the axes are pointing like all over the place, then this rotation, this curling motion is going to be very unpredictable as well. if that
Yep.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
the it was Fractaler was just saying that they're saying there's still a noob to KineFX. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of little things like that you just kind of have
Yeah.
to learn along the way. But no, it makes
Yeah.
total sense. Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
interesting too because I haven't really used this rig attribute wrangle probably ever, and I
Mm.
don't even really think
Yeah.
I knew that exists. I'm again, I don't really
Okay.
use KineFX all that much, so I think
Cool.
it's cool. And this is interesting for me because I'm not like an animator or anybody that's going to go in and actually do stuff by hand, but
Yeah.
programmatic stuff like this makes more sense. So for me at
Yeah,
least,
exactly. It's
and the
basically
local
just like, oh, sorry.
yeah. No. I was going to say the local transform. That's a you have. Oh, okay. It's a 4x4 matrix. I was thinking four was quaternion, but it's a matrix, right? So I
Yeah.
was
Yeah. No,
forgetting
I
my
think
vex
quaternion is
prefixes there.
P.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for whatever reason. There is a good
Yeah.
reason. I've heard it before, but I forget. Anyways. All right.
Yeah.
Well, continue on. Continue on. I'll let you know if there's any other questions
All
as we
right.
go here.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was gonna say we're basically just rotating this. So this is in radians. So we're just rotating it some 0.48 radians. You could convert it to degrees, but I think for this example, we're not going to. But we're just rotating each and every one of these joints 0.48 radians at the moment. And that makes this curling motion. So it's exactly the same as if I were to go into the rig pose and just add the same rotation on every single joint by hand. So that's very cool that you can save a bunch of time with this, and you can start injecting attributes and stuff like that as well if you want to mask out or whatever. So yeah, that's great. I think at this point we're gonna go on to looking at the Phyllotaxis, so how the petals are distributed, and
Oh, uh-oh. Uh, well, hold on 1 second. I think I just lost you there for a second. So, um, yeah, no, it's okay. Why don't you reconnect um, your, your screen and we'll get you back set up there. Sorry about that. Perfect. Perfect. Yep, all good. Let me just get you up there. All right.
okay,
So you were saying that we're going to look at the Phyllotaxis, which is how the petals are distributed and stuff like that. And looks like you're
yeah,
starting with a spiral of some type here. So
yeah. So I was saying that it's a lot of flowers are aligned in the golden spiral. So I think that tells us that the spiral node is a good place to start if we're just going to use Houdini nodes.
right.
And we're going to try to do that. So I need to remember how exactly I did this. It's a little mathy, but let's do it. Uh, so we can start out by just making a copy to points. And let's see here, taking our spiral and copying our mesh onto it. And this looks nothing like a flower. So one of the first things we can do is just go to the spiral node, and under output attributes, we can output an orient attribute. And that's going to start orienting it along this curve rather than just arbitrarily oriented as it was before. Um, the thing about the golden spiral is that each point rotates 137.5 degrees from the last one, or yeah, something like that. It's pretty close to, but a little bit different than that number. But for the sake of this, we're going to use 137.5. So we need to figure out how to get this thing to rotate that amount for every point. And to do that, we need to make sure that we know how many points we're making. So we're going to turn this division mode to division per curve. So the number here is also the number of points that we're generating, plus 1, I think, if I remember correctly, but let's ignore that for now. So if we just keep this at 100, that's fine. Then we need to, let's see here, we need to take this turns, and a turn is 360 degrees, right? So we need to figure out how we can turn 137 degrees for every single point. And we can do that by getting the ratio between 137.5 and 360, and you just do that by dividing it, right? So 137.5 divided by 360. And that gives us this number. And that number, we're just going to multiply by the amount of points that we're making. So we're going to take this parameter here, divisions per curve, and copy it, and put this in parentheses, and multiply, paste relative reference, and there we go. Now we have this Phyllotaxis distribution of our petals. So one thing we probably want to change is this radius mode. Just change it to explicit end radius, because otherwise, depending on how many points you have, it's going to get bigger, which is kind of unpredictable when you're trying to make a setup you can use for more things than one. So this
Yeah, it
just
seems
tells
like it
it,
kind of blows
just
up
make the
when
radius
you
1.
do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, now we have a radius control, which is very good. Yeah, we can also add a little bit of height, which I think just needs to be in the minus, because we want the inside to be higher than the outside. Yeah, let me see. Right, so now at this point, we probably want to get the skeleton copied over as well, because we only have the one skeleton. And if we try to animate all of this using that one skeleton, that wouldn't really do what we wanted to. So we're going to copy over the skeleton, and then we're going to try to make a bone deform. So let's see. So we have the skeleton here as well, right? And then we try to make the bone deform, put in the copied mesh now, and the copied skeleton, and then we'll just duplicate this curl wrangle from before and put it in here. And we can see, if I just go out of the viewer state here, we can see that it is actually working for rotating the skeleton. But when we go to the bone deform, it's going to complain because it's missing the bone capture attribute. And we didn't do that yet when we copied, so we could try to do this. And now we do have a bone capture attribute. But as you can see, it's not doing what we expect. Everything has collapsed into this one point. And that's back to the whole naming of KineFX. So let's see here. So right now, all of these, it's a little hard to see, but you can see a bunch of these are called 0.11. Maybe I can make that bigger. How do you do that? Is that geometry guides?
I think you
Guide
would
font,
do. There you go.
large. There
That
we go.
looks. There you go. A little better.
Yeah. So a bunch of them are called 0.11, and it's basically all of the names are the same, right? So we can just use the rig doctor node again in this setup here and put it below here. And by default, it has this sanitized names enabled, which just means that it's going to add point before, and then it's going to use the point number at the end. So now they all have different names. So that's a good start, but our bone capture is still wrong. So what we can do is just, again, take the original mesh without any bone capture, plug it in, and then add a bone capture proximity, once more from this copied mesh, and we'll use the copied skeleton. I can see I've also done something wrong here actually. So we could have probably had a different result. So I'm just fixing the inputs of the bone deform. I think I missed something, but it wouldn't have worked anyway. So now we have a capture here from the copied skeleton onto the copied mesh. And now we have a bone deform that is sort of working.
So Danny, I just want to stop there and think about something with that rig doctor, because I think it's important to remember like what you had talked about earlier, where you were talking about what makes up a skeleton, right? That each point needs to create a, you know, it needs to have a transform and a name, right? Or else it won't be uniquely linked, you know, and understand those as separate things. Otherwise, they're all seen as one, like all the same point, all the same thing that they'd be linking between, or the weighting would basically be all looking at those points as if they're the same. So that's kind of the issue, right? That you're fixing with that rig doctor, where you're giving them all unique names, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think if we could disable this now, and we can see how they're all kind of going in the same direction, and that's because they're all being driven by the first skeleton in this thing here. So
Right.
whichever one of these primitives has number 0, that's the one that's controlling all of our petals now.
And making them all kind of bend over to the right like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Right. So we can see that we have something now that's kind of working. The outside things here are working pretty well, but the inside things are not really working that well. You can see all of this overlapping stuff, and they're kind of stretching out. And that's because we're capturing by proximity. So in this capture proximity node, you can go to coloring and color by capture region. And that's going to show you that these meshes here that are overlapping from the beginning, they also kind of have overlapping capture attributes. So you can see that this is supposed to just be one flat value all the way across it, because it's just supposed to find the point in here and use that for the bone capture. But it's picking up a point over here from this one, because this one is closer. So this this is a problem that I've spent a long time trying to think about how to fix. And eventually the solution is just stupid simple, which is that you just make a copy of the skeleton and of the mesh in positions where they're really far away from each other. And then you make another copy of the skeleton, which is this one, where it's in the correct position, and you bone deform. So it all gets placed into the correct position. So we're just going to do that now, so you can see what I mean. We don't need this anymore. This is not relevant, so I'm just going to delete this copy to points and this as well. So this skeleton copy here, that's something we're still going to use. Then we're going to use the duplicate node, or copy and transform, or whatever. It has a lot of it has a lot of names, and we need to take the skeleton, not the spiral. And we can just say we want it to be 4 units, each copy to be 4 units away from each other. So now these skeletons are really far apart, and we need to make sure that however many points this node is producing, we need to make that many copies as well. So we're just going to take this divisions per curve parameter, copy it over, and put it into the total number. And then we'll say +1, because if we look at the spiral, it says divisions per curve 100, but it's making 101 points. So now we're making 101 primitives, meaning 101 copies of our skeleton. And then we'll make a reference copy of this copy node here by hitting Control, Shift, Alt, and dragging it over. It's a bit of a mouthful, but yeah. So this one is copy unintersecting skeletons. Let's just put that over there. And then this one will be copy unintersecting meshes. So here we'll just take the mesh and put that into there. So now we have both the mesh and the skeleton, and none of them are overlapping at all. Then we do the bone capture. Mesh in the first input, skeleton in the second. And we can just make sure by enabling the point coloring here that this is indeed working. This is a nice, smooth weight attribute. Then we're going to make a bone deform. And for the sake of clarity, I'll just move this copy here of the skeletons that are in the correct position. I'll move that over to the left, just so they're in the right order. So now we have a mesh, which is this. And we have a rest skeleton, which looks like this. And we'll do it before the curl. So just this rig doctor here. This is our, so to speak, animated, I think they call it deform. Yeah, these are our deform points. So now we go to our bone deform. And that's not working because we need this. And this is where I'm starting to get confused because let's see. So this rig doctor also needs to go into the capture proximity. There we go. Yeah, because otherwise they didn't have the correct names when they were capturing, so it makes sense that it didn't work. But now, now we have the correct capture attributes, and we're going to be able to start animating this. So by default, the bone deform deletes the capture attribute, so we just need to untick that so it doesn't do that. So now we can add another bone deform, and now our rest skeleton is just our, oh, that's the wrong one. Now our rest skeleton will be this correctly positioned skeleton. And we can use this curl wrangle here just to test. And now the deformation works after all that work.
Yeah, I really like this. I hadn't watched through every one of your videos to see exactly how you did everything, but I like this idea of kind of double bone deforming like that, and giving it like that, kind of that. It gives you like a rest state where everything is kind of spaced out. Then you deform it once back to that, that pose that you kind of wanted them to be in, and then deform from there. I like that having like multiple stages like that is really, it's smart. It makes a lot of sense. Like you said, it seems like there should be like, I don't know, like another way to do that that might be, more proper or whatever, but it works.
Yeah.
Well. Like you just kind of,
yeah,
throw it through those few steps and you get a nice result from it.
Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense. It's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, it always feels like there should be, like I don't know, some kind of match by name or something option on this capture proximity.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a reason why it's not there. I don't know, but yeah.
Hey,
I think
that's a good RFE though. That might
Yeah.
be a good RFE
Yeah.
to throw in there, because
That's true.
it does seem like you're right that it like there's so many things where it'll do that. So many different tools where it'll go by connectivity or by name or things like that. And this would be one where it would be really helpful because you do run into that a lot. Although the tricky part, I guess, is that you have a name attribute, the name is on the points. So it'd have to be something else, right? It would have to be
Yeah,
like
it
a
would
piece
have to be a
attribute or something.
different
But
attribute.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for
but
sure.
anyways, yeah, no,
But yeah.
that's it's a clever workaround for something that maybe should be an enhancement sometime soon. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
Very nice.
yeah. All right, cool. Um, yeah, so now I think we're ready to start animating our flower here. Um, so first of all, we need some kind of attribute that, let's see, do I still have it up? Yeah, I do. Okay. Some kind of attribute like this, where this inside here is 1 and the outermost one, I think that's this one here, is 0. And then in between, it's kind of, you know, it transitions between them. And with this setup, we can do that pretty simply. That's just, let's see, there's the spiral. That's just the curve view of the spiral. So if we add a resample here and we disable this maximum segment length because we don't want to change the point count, we just want to produce this curve view attribute. And if we visualize this like this, we can see that we have a 0 in here and a 1 out here. So we might invert that later. I'll just see because I don't remember exactly how I set it up, but we'll figure it out. Yeah. So when we go down here, I think we'll just get rid of this coloring here. Let's see. Yeah, of course, we don't have that attribute over here, but we do have it here on our skeleton. Disable the name. There we go. Okay. So now we have this attribute here on our skeleton because it just gets transferred over from the copy to points. So we can start to just make our two states. So I don't know. Let's decrease the amount of petals here. Actually, it's a bit crazy, and get it a bit tighter. I think I like to just use 21 as a default value here. Okay, so this could be our bloomed pose. So we could just add an all after this and call that bloom pose. And then we just duplicate this over. I'll call it bud pose. And maybe we want them to curl in on themselves a little bit. And I'm just gonna, for the sake of this example here, so you can also see another annoying thing about doing it all by hand. Let's see here. I want to scale down. Does that work? Just scaling down everything? Yeah, that works. Okay, so we're going to use a skeleton blend, which is like a blend shape, but it just works with skeletons. And the nice thing is that it uses all of these transform attributes to blend between them. So it's not just a position blend like the blend shape node is. It kind of blends between each, I don't know, each state or whatever. It's a bit hard to explain, but it uses all of those orientations to do the blending. I think you can see it here that it feels like it's curling out rather than it just kind of moving over there. So this is how you just control with a constant how much it should be animated, but we want to do it with an attribute. So you enable that by using this blend masking here and hit set from attribute. And then we can just try to check if we do curve view. You can see that these innermost ones are not doing anything and the outermost ones are blended all the way over to this state here. And we could plug this into our bone deform now. And this would be kind of a nice rest state for our flower, or like final state for our flower, I suppose. But we want it to be animated. So to do that, we can use the attribute fade node. And I think we can just do that all the way up here. But let's see if it causes us any trouble. And the attribute fade node wants a start frame attribute. So we're just going to add that, and we're going to make it from the curve view attribute over here. So if we take curve view and we call it start frame as the new name, and if we just leave it to the defaults, let's see, we can see what happens here. Oh, yeah, that throws an error for some reason. I think that might be a bug, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. Who knows? So you have to type it in manually. Start frame, like that. Then I think we're visualizing the wrong thing. Let's call this attribute growth, because that makes sense for a flower. Growth. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so now really quickly, it just goes in and out. And here on the timings tab, it has a fade out ramp. We don't want it to fade out again once it's animated in. So now it'll just kind of end at the final state where all of them are red, where all of the values are 1. This goes very quickly. So one part of that is this fade in frames. So right now it just takes 2 frames to fade it in. I'll just increase to something like 30. And then if we play it again, we can see that it does something. But all of them are basically just doing it at the same time. And that's because this start frame only goes up to 1. If it goes up to something like 72, that's a different story. And now I'll just enable this real-time toggle here. So we're playing it in real time rather than just speeding through it as fast as it can. And yeah, so now we can see we want to invert it because it's essentially animating these inner petals first. Let's have a look at it in the skeleton blend here. We just changed the attribute, mask attribute name to growth. And now we can see that the inside petals are starting to grow first, which isn't what we want in this example. So we'll just take this attribute remap and flip it over. And now it's the outer petals that grow first. So now if we go to our bone deform, we have an animation. And so what I was saying before is that when we had the curve view here as our mask attribute, this would be kind of a nice final state because we don't really want the inner petals to grow all the way. So we can just use an attribute adjust float here after the attribute fade. And we're gonna multiply the growth attribute. Let's see here, multiply. We're gonna multiply that by an attribute, remap attribute, and that will be the curve view. So now if we change this again to growth, we see that some of them don't grow all the way. So I think that's a pretty nice way of going about it because it kind of feels like the way flowers do it in real life as well. Like they don't, like these don't wither and die first. It's the outside ones. Yeah.
Yeah, and with that, you could actually go in and adjust in that attribute adjust float. You could change that mapping, right, of the curve U and adjust like how much it's going to stay on the inside, like maybe on the inside. Yeah, you can do so many different things in there. That's really that's like
exactly.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that, and then you can really control that. So if you wanted the inside to come out a little bit, you could tweak that. You could make it grow a little bit more on the inside and do things like that. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool. That's really nice.
exactly. Yeah,
Nice. Very cool.
exactly. Yeah. So the final thing we're gonna do is just get this into Vellum. So if we just plug this straight into Vellum, we're gonna have some issues because this pose is terrible for Vellum. There are so many intersections, it's gonna look just awful. So we need some kind of de-intersected state first to animate into this state here, so that Vellum has a bit of pre-roll where there are no intersections, and then it can kind of get to work after that. So the way I usually do this is just by moving. Oh, that's the wrong node. It's just by moving um, each of the skeletons a little bit away from each other using this rig pose here. So let's get this in the right place. Let's get it here. And then we add a transformation, and we don't want to add it to everything, because if we do that, I can just, if I add a star here and I start moving it, you can see that it does this crazy thing here. So that kind of goes back to the whole curling motion thing. If you just apply the same thing to everything, it does it, like the how do you explain that? Like the translation on this point affects the translation on this point, so it's adding on top of each other. And we don't want to do that. We need to find some way of getting our root points here, which we're also going to use in Vellum. So real simple, we can do that by just adding a group node way up here with our line and move that out there. And then this will be a point group. We'll call it root. And we're just going to group 0, the first point. So this is our root now. And if we can even visualize this group here, root. And now we also have it on our geometry, which is great. So we have it on the geometry and we have it on the skeleton. Yeah, so now we can use root inside of the rig pose, and we can start moving these things apart. So this is, let's see, which way do we need to move them? It's a little bit hard to get right, but yeah, so it's this way, it's minus for this setup. It's always like which which orientation do you have on your points and stuff like that. It's always hard to tell. So I just
It's like
try.
the USB thing. You always put it in the
Yeah,
wrong way
you always
first,
get
and
the
then you
wrong
flip
thing
it and it's
first.
still the
Yeah,
wrong way.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, then I usually just add a little bit of rotation outwards. I don't know. Maybe it helps. Maybe it just looks nice. Who knows? So we can add a skeleton. That's just a skeleton node. Another skeleton blend. And let's see, this skeleton blend will take the butt pose and our de-intersected. Let's add a null here so we can see that that's what it is. De-intersected pose. And this one, we're just going to start at 1, and we're going to add a keyframe, alt-clicking the parameter. And let's say 48 frames later, it's going to be 0. So now that animation goes like this. And we need to sequence these two animations. And to do that, we can use motion clips. So if we turn both of these into a motion clip, we need to know how long this animation is so we can tell the motion clip that. So I would say this is something like 105 frames long. So the frame range 1 to 105. And we're going to duplicate that over and just plug that into the de-intersected animation here. And we know that that was 48 frames because that's what we told it that it was. And then we'll add a motion clip sequence. So this just takes two motion clips and it puts them one after the other. I think you don't even need to change anything. So now if we do a motion clip evaluate, then we can see that it starts out with our deintersecting animation and then it goes into our growing animation. And if we now use this as our bone deform, we have a state here where this is also something that I've added a little bit of extra functionality in flops so that based on the curve view, you're masking it as well, so that they're more safely de-intersected. But I think this is probably okay. I think so.
Yeah, it's looking pretty
Otherwise,
good.
that's
Looking pretty good.
another reason. Yeah, otherwise that's another reason to use flops instead. Yeah. So now we can just add our Vellum configure cloth, and we can put that into a Vellum solver. And of course, as we all know, if we start playing this, it's just gonna fall down, which is also kind of fun, but not what we're going for. So the first thing we want to do is go into the Vellum cloth and just pin the root group. That's why it's nice to have it on our geometry as well, because now we can use it in Vellum. And we need to match animation. Then if we start playing it again, we can see that everything falls down except for the roots. So that's a good starting point. So now we add a Vellum constraint because we need to pin more points, but we don't want to pin them all the same. So all as what's it called? Like this is set to permanent, which basically means that it's only going to respect the animation coming in. It's not going to do anything in the Vellum solver. But we want it to be a little bit of a mix. So you get some of the animation here, and you get some of the Vellum goodness. So to do that, we have this next Vellum constraint, which we're going to make a pin to target constraint, and we'll set it to soft and match animation again. And we can just try to play this and see what happens. Now it gets all crinkly and it looks very harsh, and that's because the stiffness is all the way up here. And we can just turn this down to something like 0.01 and try to see what happens now. Yeah, that's kind of doing the right thing. On the Vellum solver, we still have by default we have some gravity, which we can just turn off in this scenario. And yeah, that's kind of the setup. I wanted to. The reason why I scaled down the butt pose was to show exactly this thing of like how it just kind of folds in on itself. You can see if we disable this part of it, the part where it scales down. So now if we just look at our animation, it doesn't get any bigger throughout. It doesn't change size. Then this Vellum simulation will work much nicer. This looks way better already, but that's because Vellum needs to be told that the rest state of the geometry is changing, and you can do that using rest blend. But I don't really want to set that up here. I always I always think that's a hassle to set up. So that's also why I want recipes to just do it for me. Yeah. So
That's
now we're at
yeah,
this point, and
awesome.
we have a flower that sort of works, and you can simulate it and stuff without any custom nodes.
Yeah, no, that's really that's super cool. What is the Do you know what the mechanism for that? I might have missed you saying this for the like wiggling is. Can you like dial that up or down, or is that just some inherent noise built into Vellum that's doing that?
The wiggling.
Yeah,
So
how it's
this
yeah,
type of thing here.
yeah.
Yes. So that's like that's a balance of this pin constraint here, right? It's like you can turn this up and you can get it more stiff, and
Right,
then it's
right.
gonna wiggle
Okay.
less. I think there's I never remember this stuff because, again, as I said, I just want to set it up once and know that it's working. But I think in flops, the I I set something like the damping ratio here on the
Yeah,
vellum cloth. I think I
that makes
increased that
sense.
to something like 0.05. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
a smaller number. I don't really remember. And then I think with that, it's gonna jiggle a bit less as well. And there's also some settings on the Vellum solver, velocity damping here. You could set that,
Yep.
um, and that would help a little bit as well. We can look at it because we're just going to put down one of the presets now and
Right, right.
and
Yeah,
look
no,
at
it's
what's
great.
happening there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. For some reason, I was doing something else for a second while you were talking about that, and I was thinking that that was the pinning um, of the bottom that you were doing, but it was I
Right.
just missed.
Yeah.
I
No, that
missed what that
happens in
second node
here.
was doing.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. Yeah. No
yep.
worries.
Cool, cool. All right, so now you want to take us and kind of show us some of the flop stuff. Is that what you're saying? Is sort of
Yeah. Exactly.
the next step here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
great.
guess if there's any questions so far for the pure KineFX stuff, then
Uh,
that's
no,
down.
just Zach is just saying, thanks for walking through the thought process. Yeah, I think that's always really good with some of these tools because it's one thing to kind of have the tool and play around with it, but seeing kind of what it does inside without having to like go through it yourself and like kind of poke at it. I think that can be really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, no, it
It's
seems like everybody's following along. And I mean, some of this stuff are things that I've kind of done on this channel sometimes, like doing obviously Vellum stuff and
yeah.
not so much with the KineFX with like blending and stuff like that. I think that's really clever. It's just good to see how people use that kind of in different ways than just here's a character, here's, the normal skeleton
Yeah.
stuff, but seeing it used for soft things like this, but you want to control them. Like, how do you, think about that? So yeah, I like that a lot. That's cool.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
But no, it
Yeah. I
looks like we
think
don't have
the
any questions really or anything like that right now. So
great.
keep on going.
I think the skeleton blend node is my favorite node these days.
Yeah, it
Okay.
does a lot of
Yeah.
heavy lifting.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah. So I'll just make a new geo container. So then we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
take a look at flops. So by default, we have this flops configure. We have flops configure cactus and flops configure symbol flower. So we'll just drop down the flops configure symbol flower, which is similar to the setup that we just made here in pure KineFX, pure Houdini. Yeah, and there we go. So just disable this visualizer here. So when you drop it down, you land on this null here in the middle. So that's just before the Vellum simulation, because I tend to, have my have my frame at 142 when I do things like that, and it really sucks to then have to sit and wait for a Vellum sim that maybe starts crashing your computer if you weren't ready for it. Uh, so then you can safely go back to frame one and start looking at the simulation. But yeah, so by default, what you get is just this animation here and a Vellum setup here at the bottom, and then it cleans up some attributes and adds a little bit more detail, and then puts it out into a LobNet where there's a little preset for rendering and making some textures as well. Oh, I forgot that starts a simulation. So we can just go back to frame one and we can see that we have some textures on it and a little lighting setup and stuff like that. But we will go back a step and just take it one node at a time and see what's happening and what they each do and what they can do. So way up here at the top, we have something familiar. We have a petal, the shape of a petal, and then we have a skeleton. So that's all made in this node here. So if we just look at the skeleton here, add a null to look at it, we can see that this is the skeleton and this is the petal shape. Um, then we have this Phyllotaxis node here, which is similar to the spiral node. It just is already set up to do all the Phyllotaxis stuff. So you can control how many points you want and what the angle between them is. So you can get different looks like this. Radius control, height control. You got ramps for both of those. It also generates a surface, which is it's going to be used in something that I'm currently working on. So it's just it kind of generates a surface that somewhat looks like these points. I think this could be better, but yeah, it's something I'm working on for later for flops. But yeah, then this goes into a copy capture, which does all that stuff we were doing before, where we, split them up into unintersecting meshes and captured, and then we put them back into the correct place. That's what this node does here. It also has a setting for setting up the transforms for the seed points, because by default they don't do that, and that's because I want people to have flexibility to do some of that stuff in their own ways if they want to do that. But it's done by a node called flops orient Phyllotaxis. So you could just plug that in between here, and then you would get the same result if you didn't have initialized seed transforms on. Yeah, so we have that on here, and it gives us some options to just quickly change the angles of the seed points. And even here, we can change the Phyllotaxis angle, and we can change a bit of the scale as well, depending on what was before our curve view, but here we're calling it flops U. If I set the visualizer here, this is the flops U attribute. Can increase the size of points, I think. How do you do that? That's here.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the flops U attribute, and that's used in a lot of places. There's a few flops attributes. There's flops U and flops num, which is just in this state here, it's just the point number basically, but yeah, it's the number of the petal. Yeah.
So I have a question about the petal shape there, and I think you probably talked about this in one of the videos that you did. When you have the skeleton that you pulled out from it, it looked a little different than what we kind of did before, which makes sense. Obviously, this is a bit more full featured.
Yeah.
But do you want to just mention that why it's kind of crossed like that?
Yeah. So basically, sometimes we can add in. Let's see here. We can add in a bone deform, and can show you. So if I'm just going to use the flops pose node here and hope that that's compatible for working with just a single petal. It's obviously not, because there's no bone capture. Let's see, bone capture proximity. There we go. Okay, so the reason for that is it's something I call arms, and this node here it's based on the curling code that we did before. So you have some controls for the root. It doesn't seem like it's working actually. So I'll have to show it further downstream. Maybe that's
no
something
problem.
I can fix for later.
Yeah.
Anyway,
just something.
So
something I thought would be interesting to talk about. So
yeah. So here we have our full skeleton, right? and we just plug it in here, and then we put that into the bone deform, and now we're looking at it. So the arms, they just allow for this. That's really all they do. It's so you can curl the shape in on itself, which a lot of flowers do. They get uh, this kind of look here. So that's just something that I wanted to have control over as well. Yeah, so that's what the arms do, and that's part of this node. By default, it generates the arms.
And those are based on the actual like kind of silhouette of the petal itself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So if
Mm-hmm.
you look at this, if we start changing the petal shape, it should always be exactly the same shape.
Mm-hmm.
So this, it's basically inside it. Uh, we can dive in.
Sure. Yeah, I think you also talk about that in one of your in one of the videos that you made. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, maybe. So if we look at the topology here, this is different from the output that we have here. So here I'm kind of doing what Vellum likes. It's triangulated geometry, kind of like remesh style. Um, so that's what you have control over here. But on the inside, it starts out the same way that we did before. So the geometry looks like this, and it's basically just taking some of these lines across here and turning those um, into bones like this. And that's using this flops petal rig node, which I think right now is not going to be able to do much outside of being inside of this node. But I'm planning to later on make it more flexible so that hopefully you can input some geometry that didn't come from flops, and if the UVs are in a certain way, or um, some other things that help us figure out how the skeleton should be aligned, then you could generate a skeleton from an incoming mesh. But yeah, that's not right now.
Cool. Yeah, I like
Uh,
that. Lots of plans. That's fun.
yeah,
I love it.
let's hope they happen.
Well,
Okay.
hey, I mean, yeah.
Uh, yeah. So if we just put that back to default. Okay. So now we have a skeleton and a mesh, and we kind of looked at this already. Let's put it back to the way it was, like so. We looked at this a bit already. There's a node called flops flower pose. So I'll just put it down here on the side. So this node just has a bunch of controls that you end up using all the time uh, when shaping a flower. So it's stuff like you want to rotate out I'll just put this into the bone deform so we can see it properly. You want to rotate out the root joint, so maybe you just want to rotate it by the flops U attribute. And all of these places where you're doing something by an attribute, you have the ability to go in and say, I want to do it by a different attribute. So you could change this to whatever attribute you've made. You could even add a noise or whatever, and that would work as well. But yeah, so you can rotate by attribute, and you have a ramp for that, so you can control the distribution there. Then you have the spine, or you also have scaling options. So you have uniform scale, and you also have that scaling by attribute thing here, with a ramp as well. Right. And then you have the controls for the spine, which is the thing we did before in our KineFX example. We just did curling of the spine. This is what we're doing here. And then we also have scaling on the spine. And yeah, you can control all of that with ramps and with attributes. So on the mesh and on the skeleton, there's also some attributes to be aware of. There's height mask, which is used all over the place. That's used for posing and shading and masking out post effects and stuff like that. Then there's center mask, which is mostly used for shading, and spine mask, which is also mostly used for shading, but also in a bit of the post post deformation stuff, just adding a bit more detail. But yeah, the height mask is really what drives a lot of these these parameters here, these rotations. So you could as well add noise to the height mask. We can try to do that here. Attribute noise. Let's see. Height mask. And maybe we just want to multiply that. And modify the element size. And we can kind of see that that starts affecting how these are curling. It's probably not the best example. There's a better example of doing this in the Cactus, but yeah. Okay, and then you have controls for the arms. So it should be pretty intuitive, right? Like you just have each of the segments of the petal, and you can start modifying. You also have this match by name token, which is because you can also have more elements of a flower than just petals. So you could, let's say we duplicate this over here. And instead of petals, maybe we call this, I don't know. I'll just call it sepals because that's the outer thick leaves. So we could just offset this. Let's see here. I'm starting to go off script now, so that's.
Oh, welcome to my world. That's the name of the game here.
Flops, orient, Phyllotaxis. I think there's a parameter I didn't expose there. Yeah, no, not custom angle, offset angle. Okay, yeah. So we could offset this angle, and maybe we only have 5 points or something like that. And maybe this is a little bit wider, and there's no scale difference. Okay, then we can merge these things together. And now, let's see, is that working? Yeah. So now it's only affecting the joints that are called something to do with petal. And we can change that to sepals. And why is that not doing what we want? Set the name here. Sepals. Do we need a custom name? Sepals? This is good. We're running into a bunch of no. Oh yeah, it is working. It is working.
It is working.
That's all
yeah.
It is working. I'm just sitting here like it's not working. Yeah, it is working. Yeah. So now we're only deforming the things we called sepals. So I guess we didn't need this after all. It was working the whole time. Yeah. So basically, you can just mask out stuff like that. And if you didn't want to do that, you can also disable this, and then you can input groups for each of them. So now it's just doing it on the whole thing because all of them have these 3 groups on their skeletons. Yeah. So that's why that
Yeah,
exists.
that makes sense. A couple of things. One, I like that you have a very intimate knowledge of all of the different parts of flowers. I think that's always a funny thing that happens when you have like a project like where
Yeah.
you have to learn something about flowers, or I've done
Yeah.
stuff about like refrigeration cycles and things like that I've had to learn
Oh
all this
yeah.
absurd
Yeah.
information about. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, now that's in my brain forever. So that's funny. And
Yeah.
two, I think another thing that would be cool is you could do the like how Vellum you can pack and merge and unpack basically.
Yeah.
It's kind of like something like that would be kind of cool if you had multiple pieces instead of
Yeah,
doing,
for
you know,
sure.
the
Yeah.
multiple merges. But I don't even
Yeah.
I'm not even really this was mesmerizing. I was in full screen. Um yeah, yeah, just a fun little addition there. Do you have RFEs for flops? Do you have a bug system?
I don't have a setup for taking
I'm
them,
just
but
kidding.
I'm open for feedback.
No, it's
Yeah.
just being silly. No, it looks cool. It's really makes a lot of sense that you can kind of make different pieces and have them all work. I
Yeah.
think you again. I watched a couple of the videos, and I think there was one where you had like stamens and pistils and things like that, and you were
Yeah.
controlling those separately and stuff like that. So that was cool to see how
Yeah.
that all works. But
Exactly.
anyways,
Yeah.
onward.
Yes. Yeah. And there's also so on that topic, statements and pistols. There's presets for all of these names, right? So these are the 5 common parts that are going to be in flowers. Some flowers have all of them. Some flowers just have some of them. So this is just an easy way to select the correct name for a thing. And that's on most of the nodes where you set a name. I think it's on all of them. I hope. If it's not, then it's because I missed it. But yeah, um, yeah. Anyway, then because I'm not that smart, we're just transferring the growth attribute the from the skeleton onto the mesh. I think there must be a better way of doing this. I have some suggestions, but I didn't really like the idea of adding a node in between the mesh and the bone deform uh, to to be connected to this. Oh yeah, I didn't go through this. Sorry. uh, anyway,
Yeah, no
I
problem.
didn't like the idea of having an extra node here to make sure that the growth was added here as well. So I'm trying to figure out a way around that. But for now, it's just an attribute transfer. And even though it's a little bit off, it works fine. You can turn up the sample count and it looks better. Yeah. Anyway, so the part that we missed is the post blending. So all of that animation attribute juggling we did before is handled by this post blend node. So if we just play the animation, it looks like this. And you have this parameter here for the animation length. So you could set this down to 60 and it goes way faster. So yeah, so that it's basically just like setting, it's like setting a keyframe on frame 1 and then on this frame here. Um, and and then adding this interpolation from this ramp here in between them. That's what it's doing essentially. You can also set its manual position where you can just keyframe it yourself. So here there's already a keyframe on it, which I think is just set to 0 by default. So if you set that to 1 at the end here, you can see we have a similar result here. Yeah, and it has this transition width as well. So you could put that all the way down and you see like each petal is just flopping out one at a time. Could be cool for some MoGraph style effect. The higher you go with this, the more kind of smooth it's going to be. So if you set this to like 5, they're kind of growing more at the same time, which is also nice. I just set it to 1 at default because it kind of has some nice separation, but it's also not like super jaggedy. Yeah, you also have this option here for limiting the growth, which is what we did before, just making sure that the inner petals don't grow too crazy, because otherwise it ends up looking like this. So we just put that down to 0 or some higher amount here. And of course you have a ramp to control that as well. You can also, here I've set an expression to just make sure that it's only taking the petals. In case I had sepals and other stuff as well, I didn't want to limit their growth. I only want to limit the growth of the petals. So that's a nice thing as well. You could adjust that. Let's see. There's a flops map attribute, which is kind of like the start frame attribute we were making before, or the curve view. It's in this setup, it's the same as the flops view, I think just inverted. But let's see if we look at it here. Yeah, it's the same as the flops view, just inverted. But in other setups where you have more parts of the skeleton, it gets a bit more complicated, and then the flops view or the flops map attribute is used to map the growth. And that's also something where you could inject your own attributes and your own noises and stuff like that. Yeah. There's also a skeleton noise node, which we can just play the animation here, and it's just animated a little bit. Increase the amplitude, it goes a bit crazy. Yeah. It's just to get a little bit of keep alive on the animation itself, which gives a better starting point for Vellum.
Those would, if you did it big like that, that'd be more like a Chris Rutledge flower. Like
yeah,
sort of like wiggling all over the
yeah,
place
that's
and
true.
crazy.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Chris Rutledge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's Chris's flower version, just
yeah.
jiggling all over the place and doing crazy
There
stuff.
we go.
Anyways.
Ooh,
Cool.
okay.
I love that you've like thought about a lot of these different nodes and things like that. Like even just like that where you're doing a little bit of noise and things like that. Like it's just cool that you're thinking about, so many different stages of how you might be messing with it, and probably stuff that you've run into, multiple times when doing things like this. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, sweet. We also have flops deintersect, which is just like what we did before as well. It's basically just a rig pose, except it has all of that blending and making sure the animations line up and stuff like that internally. So you have a deintersection length, which you can set to however long you want. Maybe you only want it for 8 frames because it's a very simple flower. Usually, I think 48 is a good starting point, and then if it's very complicated, you can make it longer for Vellum to have more time to figure it out, or you can make it shorter if it's very simple. Yeah, there's a few parameters here, but usually the defaults are good. It's just like kind of ramping the inner petals. Like, do they go all the way out, or do they go in a little bit? I think usually this default of 0.8, which is in the recipe, works very well. So you can see nothing is intersecting. And bone deform, animated flower. Then we get to a mesh detail. So here we have an option for a group, of course. So we just do it on the petals here, and we subdivide. And then it's very subtle, but it also adds it's very subtle because it's not doing anything in the pre-roll, which it's not supposed to, because then you get into trouble as well with Vellum. Like it's gonna have some popping here. But so if we go to the end here, we can we can see what it does. So if we disable and enable it, it just has some noises that I find are commonly used, at least for me, when making a flower. So the first thing you have is kind of, if we increase this subdivision depth, it's easier to see. The first thing we have is these big ridges that go along the length of the flower. And you have masks using the height mask. So you could mask out where along the length of the flower that you want this effect to appear. Maybe you don't want it at the end at all. Yeah, you can do that. You can increase the amplitude, the frequency. This should all be very familiar because it's just noise settings. And then you also mask it by the growth so that as it's coming out, it starts appearing these noises. Then you have some bumps that are, yeah, they're bumps on the geometry. And all of these, of course, are just, it's only named these things because of the default frequencies. It's, I think underneath it's the same noise, if I remember correctly. It's just because of these frequencies, the defaults of the frequencies, that I've named them differently. Then my favorite thing is wiggles. So that's what's happening out here on the edges. And you can increase that to get this wiggly shape on the edges of your petals. And this is where we use the center mask to mask it out as well. So you have a ramp for controlling that. Yeah.
That looks so fun. I love that. That's really cool.
And you can rotate them, change the depth. Yeah. And then displacing the spine, if you wanted to do that for some reason, that's where we use the spine mask. I don't do that a lot, but sometimes I do use it.
And just so I'm thinking of this correctly, this is all going into the pre-Vellum stuff that you're doing, and then Vellum is going to be trying to match these shapes as it's
exactly
animating out.
Yeah.
So this isn't like one-to-one what you're going to get for the final, but it's basically guiding that.
Yeah, exactly. So something you'll
Cool.
sometimes end up doing is you'll do this more extreme in this stage here, so that when Vellum takes it over, it's gonna get to the amount that you actually want it to end up at, rather than being too little of it. That's
because
something
it's
you
soft
could do.
pins, right?
Yeah, exactly. Soft pins, and it's rest blend as well inside. So
okay.
it's trying to match the shape, but of course, because it's a simulation, it doesn't quite do it. So you can do it more extreme, and then Vellum has just more of this to try to match, and it's going to be more like this. But what I do in this setup is just inject more of it again after the Vellum sim. So you can see the Vellum sim is here.
Yeah.
And then I inject this mesh detail down here again, just to get a bit of extra detail, because I have an old computer by now, and the specs aren't the beefiest. So I don't put crazy stuff into Vellum. I put stuff like this into Vellum. This is as crazy as I'll go most of the time.
Right.
Yeah. I saw
Yeah, that makes sense.
I saw Ian Frederick did a tutorial on flops as well. He's done a bunch of flower stuff in the past, and he, I think before he went into Vellum, he turned the subdivision depth up to like 3 or 4, and it was this kind of geometry going into Vellum.
Yeah.
And that I don't know, that I'm scared to do that on my computer.
yeah,
So
I guess you've
I'm
got to
here.
have a fairly recent computer to be able to do all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then we've added some mesh detail. Now we have a nice animated flower here and ready to go into Vellum. So the first thing I do is just remap the height mask to the stretch stiffness, which I'm using on the pin constraint. So let's see here. So what we do with that is we just tell it to be more stiff on the pins down here towards the base, and more free and loose towards the tip of the petal. So that way you get a little bit of flopping here at the end where you kind of want it to be nice and loose, and then you get it to be more stiff down here where it makes sense because it's also connected to the base of the flower. If you had a base of the flower, um, that it would be more stiff down here.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
thinking of this when you were kind of talking through something earlier, and I was going to ask that when you got to the simulation, but there it is,
yeah,
already done. It
yeah,
makes a lot of sense
there it
to
is.
allow it to
Yeah,
be more free towards the edges,
yeah,
to
yeah,
get more of that
exactly.
nice sim stuff from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Is it
and
also
then
loosening as you go, as it's going from its kind of constrained closed shape out? Is it stiffer there too? Is that how that works?
no, not yet. I did set it up at one point on an old iteration, but I didn't get around to doing it on on this version of flops.
Got it. Yeah, I was just
But
curious. I was just curious if that
yeah,
was part of it or if there was, yeah, that makes
yeah,
sense to.
no, but there's definitely some like blending in between them. It's just I think for now I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, and then later on
Yeah.
more of those things will come. I think the slightly dangerous thing about doing that is that it's a little bit less clear from the outside what's happening when you go into Vellum, um,
Okay.
because now you have more layers of stuff to debug.
Right.
If something for some reason doesn't work, but of course it's nice to have the option. So I think I will probably add it as a recipe or something like that. So it's easy
Cool.
to set up. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I mean,
but
I
it's
think this makes a
definitely
ton of sense. I just was curious if there was something that I wasn't thinking of that was
yeah.
actually doing that, but that's cool. Yeah,
No,
it's
no,
cool either
yeah,
way.
not yet, no. But it's definitely it definitely would be good because of course they're more stiff when they're small little bud petals.
Yep. Yep. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. And the vellum cloth, now we see if I changed any settings here. Damping ratio on the bend 0.05.
Yeah, you were right. You remembered.
uh, yeah. But other than that, it's pretty much default. I think this thickness is a little bit less, and then there's the pin added. Uh, but yeah, usually these settings just work for me. But of course, like you can play around with how stiff you want the bend to be and stuff like that. Probably wouldn't play around with the stretch stiffness because the the petals aren't meant to stretch, at least not that much. So it's good to have this pretty stiff. Then there's a pin constraint, which is also very similar to what we set up before, except we're scaling it by an attribute, and that's it. Um, yeah, and then we have the Vellum solver, and we have this null over here, which is just a Vellum reference. So that's when you dive into the Vellum solver, we have two nodes inside of it. We have a rest blend, which references the Vellum reference, and just every single frame, it tries to update the rest geometry to match the incoming or the one from the Vellum reference, but that's the same. So then we get those stuff like scale changes on the mesh. We get that working, and also those post mesh added detail things. Yeah. So we also have this wrangle here, which just grabs the p scale from the reference, because I ran into some issues where if the petals start getting really small, the scale of the points, so that's these little things here, they start getting too close together, and then you end up with a very wrinkled mesh. So if you just update that using the p scale from the reference node, then you will have no problems, and that's what this does by default in the recipe here. So that's all set up, and then you can play the Vellum sim, and we can already see that those were flooping more as they were coming in. Um, and are also more loose here.
Yeah, I like actually that they're loose there. I think it actually looks pretty nice. I'm sure there's points where you might want it to be more stiff or whatever, but it does look really nice that it's doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I think another, because I did have it at one point be completely stiff in the de-intersection animation, but the problem with that is that you don't get any kind of happy accidents with how they overlap, and that's a bit unfortunate because
Yeah.
it just ends up being too perfect. So I think sometimes you end up having issues where um, they kind of end up bending inside of the like inside of the flower bud.
Mhm.
But most of the time it just ends up looking like this, which it just has a little bit of imperfection, but it's still generally a good shape.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then copy over the growth from before the sim because the sim doesn't have. Let's see, this is Vellum, so it makes a bunch of attributes. Growth. There we go. Yeah, so this attribute will just be 1 or 0 the whole way through because that's what it is at the beginning. So then we just copy that over so that we get it onto the geometry. And by default, delete all the attributes that aren't going to be used in render or in cops for generating textures. Um, delete the groups. And then we add a little bit more detail again, which is not a lot at this point because it hasn't grown that far. It's all masked by the growth. Yeah, there we go. So now it just has a bit more detail here. You can see without and with. So you want to be careful with how extreme you do this because, of course, this is post-sim, so you can't really resolve the intersections. But yeah, you can get just a little bit more detail and just blur it out because some of these shapes are a bit crazy. Maybe that's still too crazy. Yeah, and that's the flower. Then we have a lobnet, which just brings it in. Now it starts cooking everything again, so I'm not gonna let it do that, but it just brings in the flower with the SOP import and adds a quick surface material, applies it, adds a dome light, and this quick surface material is just connected to some maps from cops, which are over here, and we have a few flops flops cops. That's terrible.
Nice. Yeah,
We
I
have a
like that.
few flops cops. So rasterizing the flower, you just pick a reference, and this you just need one single petal. So taking this out flower is very unnecessary. You could, and I will do that for later as well. You could essentially just take this node up here and go lobnet and then rasterize that instead. It's going to be a little bit jaggedy, but that's okay, I think, because it matches the UVs anyway. But yeah, so just rasterize the flower and you get these different outputs here. Uh, yeah, and then there's a base color, which just takes some of the inputs from the rasterized flower and gives you some options for generating a quick base color for the flower. So there's this main color here, which is just a color ramp mainly based on the height mask, but also depending on the center mask weight, you can add in the center to play a role in this. There's an edge color as well, so you can just add some color to the edges, go crazy. There is, I broke this node while trying to make it better, so this is not working on my end right now. but there there is a vein map node which in whatever version you've downloaded, whoever is has downloaded it, will work to generate a basic map of veins across the flower, and that gets plugged into this flop space color as well. Here, veins, and then you can modify the colors based on the veins. But yeah, I broke it on my end because I'm trying to make it better, but didn't quite finish it before this demo. Yeah. But yeah, so it's basically just this, and then there's a fractal noise, which is most of the bump, because the bump also uses the vein map, but because the vein map isn't working, none of that is coming through either.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has this whirly noise here because flowers, they have a cell structure underneath, or like inside them. So just adding this little bit of whirly noise to the bump helps sell that effect. Not that this is the very best look dev, but it's a good start.
Hey, I mean, I'm self-proclaimed not very good at lighting, look dev, or rendering. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
miles ahead of what I would have done. So it's two thumbs up from me over here. So
That's great. But yeah, so I mean, basically, this is just supposed to be a start. It's not. It's not that this
yeah,
is a finished thing. There's this edge detail, which some flowers just have a little bit of, you know, extra detail that if you were to try to get this in the mesh, you would go insane because there's too much going on there. Right now, this node is super simple. It's just an element size. I would like to add more options to that later. That's on the to-do list. But you plug that into the opacity, and if you saw the Houdini 21 keynote, you
yep,
would know that you can now do stencil maps in Karma. So this isn't going to be an expensive operation in 21, which is good.
nice.
Uh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there anything else that since that just came out yesterday? Is there anything else in there that you're kind of excited for this type of
yeah,
like the cables stuff? Like, is that something that you're like, I don't know,
yeah,
maybe
for
you could
sure.
even mess with in here? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure how cables work, but I'm sure, I mean, some of this stuff here, where we're just taking a bunch of inputs to the same, or outputs to the same inputs over here, could
Yeah.
probably be cabled up.
Yep.
Also,
Yeah, definitely.
the idea behind this flops vein map is that, um, let's try to open it up actually and see if there's something in there that we can look at. It's a mess because it's in the middle of being developed. Let's see. It's just doing nothing, straight up doing nothing. I don't know. Okay, it's because right. Okay, it's because I've set some default here where I'm deleting everything except petal number 95, and we don't have 95 petals, so of course that's not working. Let's see. Still nothing coming out here.
Oh, because your display's up at the top, maybe, or is there an output in there?
Uh, there is an
No, there is
output.
an output. Okay.
Yeah, let's see. Is it this? Yeah, this is what it was before. Also not very stable. I think I also changed some things, so it's not great. But anyway, the point is that there are curves in here. That's what I wanted to show. And now in COPS, there's in Houdini 21, you can
Curve
rasterize
rasterizer. Yeah.
curves. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that'll be
that's very
nice.
exciting. That makes this whole thing a lot easier because before that was a mess for me
Yeah.
to do. Yeah.
So that'll be nice.
Uh, so yeah, now you can kind of see what this is intended to do. Uh, let's see, base color. Yeah, there we go. Not the prettiest version, of course, because it doesn't really work, but
It's
it'll
like
look better
an
in.
industrial, like
Yeah,
robotic
it's an
kind of thing or
industrial
something.
flower. Yeah. Yeah. and then
But
that
that's
gets
cool
plugged
though
into the
still.
flower, and you can render it. And that's the idea behind this recipe, is that it's a great starting point, which
Hmm.
it has all the things that you would probably need to start off with, and then you can add more stuff wherever you need it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's really cool. It's so exciting, like seeing what people are even doing with like cops and stuff like that, and how that can really push like push forward something like this where you're doing geometry, but then you're like, oh, I really
yeah,
want to get that one last little step in there, and it's
yeah,
amazing how much you're able to do with just some of those last little bits. I
yeah.
don't
It's
know, it's really
crazy.
cool.
Yeah,
And like you said, there's lots of new stuff coming there as
yeah,
well. So
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, this is awesome, Danny. This is really cool. I love seeing how all of the there's just so many things I feel like you've thought about through this, which is really I don't know. It's
thank you.
just great to see people like doing really well thought through kind of tooling and stuff like that. And yeah, it's really nice. I like it a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
So I guess I know we're kind of getting close on time here. Was there any last thing maybe you want to just jump in and kind of, I know it's almost midnight for you, so it's getting a bit late. Any last thing you want to kind of jump in here and jump ahead to, or kind of move over to, or anything else like that that
Mm,
you'd
I
like to
think
show?
I would just like to really quickly show a different setup that I've been working on the side, which does a
Yeah,
bit more of that, injecting your own work into it.
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's take a look at
Um,
it.
so so it's a cactus, which has this kind of crazy geometry here, with these spikes on it. Um, the animation isn't great because it just starts off from these small things. Eventually, I'm gonna have them kind of grow up along a stem. But I wanted to do it with stuff that's available in the current version of flops, so that's what we did here. So basically, this is very similar to the cactus recipe. Um, configure cactus.
Oh, I meant to ask: are these actually recipes, or are they like? How did you build all of those?
Yeah, so this one over here is not a recipe. I might simplify it up and make it into a recipe, or like make it nicer, make it more organized, and make it into a recipe once it's done. But this cactus here, that's a recipe, and the one we looked at before is a
Yeah,
recipe as well.
gotcha. Cool,
Yeah.
awesome. So you're using the
So
recipe system. That's cool. I like that.
yeah, it's great. It's a good
Probably makes it a
feature.
lot easier to make these like crazy presets like this, and
Yeah, exactly.
able to be dropped
Yeah,
down. That's great.
yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, so the concept behind doing cactuses is that you make a skeleton and then you use flops sweep skeleton to make a mesh, and then you just copy capture like before, and then the whole process is just the same. Uh, yeah. So the point was that that's what we're doing here as well. We have a line and we make a skeleton and we turn it into a mesh. And then we do a bunch of subs stuff to turn that simple mesh into this, and try our best to retain the attributes that we need later on. And then we copy capture again, and everything just works the same as before, even though we did a custom mesh. So all of this uh, posing. Let's see. So this is the bud pose, and this over here is the bloom pose. We even just use an attribute noise in this to to go nuts, and that just works as well. So you can see this. This is into Christopher Rutledge territory
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah. So that's the great thing about this just being an open tool set, right? Because you can inject stuff at any point, even stuff like noises and whatnot. But yeah, so you just have the growing animation just like before. We add a little bit of skeleton noise and bone deform, and then we get this cactus here. And I'm working on turning this into a recipe as well, but this geometry here is pretty dense. And as I was saying before, me doing Vellum with dense geometry is a no-no. So there's a bit of work here to do a soft body simulation, basically to make sure that all these intersections we're seeing here, we don't have those at the end.
Yeah.
So there's still a little bit, but it's way less than before. So yeah, that's something I want to make into a recipe, basically. But that's the kind of stuff you can do, like just injecting a bunch of custom workflows into it.
Yeah, and making
Um,
your own, like some of your own geometry and messing around with stuff like that. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly.
you
Yeah,
could really take it and go so many different directions with it, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
awesome. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that's really cool. And so you're saying you're doing a soft body simulation there. What kind of soft body were you doing? Is it just like a is it a
It is
tetrahedral, or is it
struts,
just
I
struts?
think.
Yep.
Yeah, struts. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know actually what was the best way to go. I tried struts and balloon and tets, and this is, I don't know, the one that uh, worked the fastest, but also the fastest and the most okay.
Right, right.
um,
Well, the tetrahedron thing would be pretty I feel like that would be pretty computational and heavy.
yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah,
you've got tetrahedrons to deal with as well. So then you got to figure out how to get,
yeah,
transfer all your motion and stuff. So yeah,
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 yeah.
I
That's
think
the
that makes
thing.
sense. I was just curious which one you were using.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, so we get this, and I mean it runs pretty quickly on my machine, even though it's a slow machine at this point. And then yeah, point to form the original geometry. I'm sure there's people who know more about Vellum workflows who could do that better than what I'm doing here, but there's also a little bit of then blend shape masking it by the growth attribute, so that stuff that hasn't really grown yet isn't doing this point deform because they look very ugly. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah,
right, cuz it's probably doing some weird, yeah, it's probably getting some weird
it's
weighting and
probably
stuff in there.
just too small or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how all this works exactly, but
No, but
yeah,
that makes
even
sense. I mean, it's yeah, using a blend shape like that to do it seems fine, and it looks good. So that's really all that matters, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
taking a smarter direction isn't yeah, it's never never a bad thing. Never a bad thing.
yeah, no. And yeah, then just using the standard groom tools to add a little bit of fuzz to the surface of the cactus,
Awesome.
which is also part of the cactus recipe. Um,
Yes. Yeah, I saw that
yeah,
in the other thing. Like you've got little hairs and stuff on there, which must look
yeah,
really fun when you like render it in Karma and stuff like that.
yeah, it does. Yeah, it looks
Gives it a
very nice.
nice little added touch. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
Um,
nice.
the next the next thing that's coming is doing stuff like this, where you have a stem geometry that goes into the sepals, the outer leaves, and kind of blends
Yeah,
nicely, which is something that I've spent way too much time figuring out to eventually land on a very simple solution again. But yeah, so this is stuff that's in development from my side, but it's hopefully gonna be done soon. And
that's
then
cool.
this flower here will be a recipe at that point.
Nice.
Uh,
That looks really
so yeah,
great. Oh, that looks so cool. Love. Oh, that's. I like that the flower is like coming up like that too. That it's like growing up. That's
yeah,
really nice.
exactly. Yeah, and and it works with Vellum as well. This one isn't set up in Vellum, but I did an earlier test where everything was just working nicely, which was surprising to
Nice.
me because I thought like if it starts moving through space as well, that must cause issues, but surprisingly it didn't. Uh,
Yeah, sometimes you get those nice surprises, right? Happy accidents
yeah,
sometimes, right? So,
yeah, uh,
yeah,
yeah,
that's fantastic. I like that a lot. That'll be really exciting to see, uh, see how that all turns out and what kind of stuff you're coming up to with that. Very nice. Um, cool. Well, I mean, unless you have anything else to show, I think we're probably going to start wrapping things up there. But I did
yeah,
want to ask you, where can people connect with you online if they want to, get in, know more about
yeah.
what you're doing and stuff like that. Maybe you can share website, whatever places
Yeah.
you'd like to point people to.
I mean, I think I am very inactive on social media and stuff like that. So I put up YouTube videos every once in a while and post it on LinkedIn and stuff like that when I do it. So you
Great.
can connect to me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I don't post there anymore, but I do have an account. Uh, I'm also on Discord, which is the main platform that I'm on. So if you're in one of the same channels, I'm in the Houdini Hangout now, so you can chat
Yeah,
with me
yeah,
on there.
exactly. Yep. Fantastic.
Yeah, stuff like
Awesome.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the
Yeah,
videos are great, like I said, and if you like, you go into so much more than you've even shown here in those videos and stuff like that, and go through a lot of different stuff that I think you've kind of built into these tools and stuff like that. So,
mm.
it's cool to see all of that. So, yeah, that's awesome, Danny. Thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here and
Thank you.
for spending some time and taking some time to do all this stuff. Yeah, it's just great to have someone that's coming at things from a different angle and has some interesting stuff like this to share. Super cool, and yeah, I think everybody will be looking forward to some of the things that you're going to be doing in the future with updates and things like that. So that should be really cool. Anything else
Yeah. Thank you.
that you're I don't know, maybe that you can share that you're working on in the future other than the flower stuff, or anything that you're, I don't know, excited to.
uh, I don't know if this is ever gonna uh, become anything, but I I kind of started making something that I called slops for doing stuff like this text stuff for slides.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh,
to
really?
just yeah. Um, so
Okay.
just uh, for now, it's just basically it's just text notes that has a match size inside of it. So when
So
you
you can
put
like
down
orient stuff
uh,
together. Oh, that's cool.
text, then it's it's the position is based on the
That's
input,
fun.
um,
This is like
and
educator nerd stuff. This is like stuff
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like excited about. I'm like, oh yeah, I could see that being
yeah,
super helpful.
exactly. And then I made some shelf tools for a hotkey that just whichever switch node is selected or is has the display flag on it, it just changes
I was
the input.
I was wondering how you were doing that. I heard you clicking something. I'm like, I don't know what he's
Yeah.
doing there, but that's pretty cool. All right,
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's we
Yeah.
should
So
have you
maybe
should.
maybe I'll put that out somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
Who
that's
knows?
really cool. That's very neat. I like that a lot. Fun. Well, that's very cool. Well, Danny, thank you so much for
Yeah. Thank you.
being here and
It's
for
a pleasure.
yeah, sharing with everybody and yeah, it seems like it's one of those things where it's nice to be able to kind of take something that you've learned a lot about and being able to kind of share that with other people and make their lives a little bit less
Yeah,
less
for
of a
sure.
hassle to get up to this to get up to
Yeah.
speed with it, right?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's cool. I know I've done stuff like that with knitting and things like that and in like
Mm,
in previous jobs, and now I've seen so many tool sets and I'm like, man, I wish I would have had that. It would have made my life so much easier.
yeah.
So it's cool to be able to kind of give those things out and help like that. So a lot of respect
Yeah.
for you there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think we'll wrap things up there. Thank you guys all for joining and for watching. Again, thanks Danny for being here. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything like that, you can see his YouTube videos. You can reach out to him through maybe the Discord. And if you want to join our Discord, there's a link on HoudiniHangout.com, so you can always go and join that. So yeah, that's it for this week, and got some more guests coming up for the next few weeks, so it should be pretty exciting. And yeah, thanks Danny for kicking us off on a couple weeks here of some cool guests. So that's it, and we'll see you guys all next week. Thanks all for joining. Bye.